Here's a demand curve for roads. You see that as prices rise, more people are willing to provide roads, and as prices fall, more people are willing to buy access to roads or to buy roads. These two drives cross, and where they cross becomes the market price or the going rate. Now what happens when you give someone a monopoly on roads? Well, because there is no longer competition, the demand has no power. Let's say the most profitable price for road access is 7 cents a mile to the supplier. Less people will use the road as a result, but the higher price makes up for it. If you raise it any higher than 7 cents a mile, you will lose too many customers and actually start losing money in total. So in a monopoly, you are actually producing less road at a higher price than in a competitive market. So when you give the government an effective monopoly on roads through extreme subsidies, you can expect them to be too expensive and there to be not enough of them. Other problems with public roads: because they are a common access resource, they will be overused. You pay taxes no matter what, and you don't pay less taxes when you don't use it, so roads function as a common access resource. They are free to use. It's also a political resource, and so road allocation will be skewed to districts with influential politicians. This is why you will have bridges to nowhere. Public roads are also not optional. You cannot opt out of the public road system. And as in all democratic systems, you are at the mercy of the majority. People can vote to make you pay for their roads. And of course, this is exactly what happens. On the other hand, private roads will be cheaper and of a higher quality as a result of competition. They will be more environmentally friendly. There's a built-in incentive to carpool. Also, the users will pay. Thus, the cost will be specific to personal use and area use. People who don't use roads won't pay for them, and the roads will be built where they are needed. And finally, perhaps roads aren't the most efficient way for people to travel. Roads are so heavily subsidized that there's no way to tell at this point. People often assume roads are the most efficient, but roads just get so much seized from everyone else that it's really difficult to compete. The privatizing of roads could result in a rebirth of rail. Maybe we'll be more like Europe and Japan in that regard, although European rail companies receive heavy subsidies. And finally, please don't believe that there won't be transportation if there is no state. If you believe that transportation cannot make a sustainable return on investment in a free market, then you are basically saying that transportation is not worth the cost, in which there shouldn't be state funding anyway. But the truth is that transportation is worth the cost, and so people will pay to have it done by private companies, and the private companies will provide it more cheaply, more fairly, and with higher quality. If you are worried that the underclass won't have access to transportation, what you need to keep in mind is that employers pay for transportation anyway. And if roads were privatized, then employers would pay less taxes and would have more money to pay for wages. And the underclass would have more wages to pay for their private transportation. And in all likelihood, the underclass would be better off as a result because the roads are now cheaper.